like to know firsthand what it's like to grow and transform, becoming more satisfied and successful? I'm Terry Yoffe, and welcome. These podcasts are an integral part of the Try Coaching brand, delivering the same messaging as my coaching platform. I help clients overcome the obstacles that keep them stuck by allowing them to clarify their goals, thereby allowing them to realize their own joy and success. Through my podcast, Extraordinary Work, Conversations About Creating Change, I have the privilege of talking to influential people that are creating change and making a difference. Like coaching, these conversations are meant to provide inspiration and wisdom that can propel you to a more fulfilling life and greater purpose.
Initially, I think hard for people to let themselves realize that there's a grieving process and a huge arc of emotion that is going to carry all the way through the process. And really for the rest of their lives, there'll be PTSD kinds of, effects.
Can you imagine having to move out of your home at a moment's notice? My next guest, interior designer Jana Rosenblatt, who lives in the Los Angeles area, knows firsthand what it's like to lose a home. Fortunately, in her case, it wasn't a result of fires, but it was nonetheless devastating and unsettling. In this emotional and inspiring conversation, Jana dives into her work in helping families rebuild after the most recent raging and out-of-control fires that destroyed so much. She guides families through their most difficult challenges, including the grieving and emotional trauma, and shows them how they can turn a loss into a fresh start, one home at a time. Welcome. Today we have Jana Rosenblatt of Jana Design Interiors. Jana lives in the LA area, and I don't think I have to say anything about what's been happening there. So I am so excited and so thrilled to have a voice like Jana talk to us about what it's like in LA these days. Jana, welcome.
Thank you, Terry. It's really an honor to be here. And it's been a remarkable time here in LA. It's only the beginning of what's going to be a long process of discovery and healing. And, we're just at the beginning.
Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are and with your design company, and certainly in a very unique position with what you do to take it out and expand and really create change.
I have my own interior design company. I've been in business for almost 25 years. And prior to that, I was in the film and television and theater industry as a designer. When I moved to LA from New York, I was still in the industry, but I found, it's fun to reflect back to New York, that New York was a small town and I worked with the same people over and over and over. Here, it's big business, and the entertainment industry is it wasn't as much as wholesome an environment, and it was just very challenging. So luckily, I started to do the homes and offices of the people I was working with, and eventually I was able to just start riding the horse in the direction it was going, and started my own company doing interior design. And through all of the years, I had done a lot of insurance projects, a lot of people who had flooding in their home or isolated fires and things like that. So I was a little bit familiar with the language. And eventually, as fires have grown more and more completely consuming of the areas around me, I've had a lot more experience working with people who have lost their homes entirely due to fire. And I've also had my own personal experience with needing to move out of my house for 14 months when a tree fell on it. When you haven't gone through something personally yourself, you can relate intellectually, but you can't intrinsically. And so having needed to evacuate my home because it was red tagged, living somewhere else for what became 14 months, which should have been unnecessary, but the cumbersome insurance system made it very challenging, insurance and mortgage system. So we were, and experiencing that and having to rebuild my own home, coupled with my years of experience doing interior design projects commercially and residentially, really informs what I do now and the direction that I am now in a position to go, hopefully be, really accessible to the people who are about to approach the same kind of issue.
Talk to us about the recent fires, what you've seen, certainly the emotional, and all those people that have to move. I mean, literally, the ones that have the money, perhaps their rebuilding will not be as difficult as those that, and there are many more of those, I am assuming, that just are left homeless.
It's devastating and heartbreaking. And I think, it's only been about 3.5, 4 weeks since this all happened. So I think that everyone is in a state of shock. And I've clued into, and I'm attending some Zoom meetings in both of the major areas where the disaster was at most intense, in Altadena, Pasadena area, and then in the Palisades, where I personally have worked on the building of 5 new homes from the ground up. And I actually haven't checked to see what's standing. I plan to do that, but I haven't yet. And I'm currently working on a home that is in the Palisades that did not get taken by the fires, for which we are all truly grateful. But there's a sort of suspended animation where people are trying to gather resources of the community. There are leaders in the communities that are coming to the forefront and saying, listen, let's band together, let's communicate, let's see what kind of resources. There is a more vast a range of financial, wealth in both of those areas. There are people in Altadena, Pasadena, whose homes are generational. They've lived in their homes. Now they're probably 3rd or 4th generation, and may not have, the great wealth of some of the people who have bought into the area, more recently. The Palisades, there are some extraordinary homes and wealthy people who have challenging insurance issues because they're on the sort of state-funded insurance programs, that even if they seem to be, wealthier people, it's going to be challenging for a lot of people on every level. And there are a lot of people, the whole town in the Palisades, the whole main street is gone. And so I have a very good friend who's an architect whose home was walking distance to his office right on the main street on Sunset. And they're both gone. And he's an amazing, resilient man and will regroup. I was about a mile from one of the evacuation zones of a 3rd fire that was happening simultaneously. We were packed and ready to go, but very fortunate not to have had to go. But I understand that on the edge feeling. I can only imagine what it was like to be evacuated and watching the statistics and the news. And it's just debilitatingly staggering to be in a position to lose everything you had, except, hopefully not the people with you. And you got out with your, God willing, your people and your pets. And, some people couldn't even grab much. The earlier people involved that were evacuating were a moment's notice.
I actually have a nephew that lives in Highland Park. He was away when all this happened. Luckily, his house was standing, a lot of ash. I know several people in the LA area. One woman, her home was fine. Her daughter's school got demolished and they had to figure out where to put her.
Plus, when people are displaced, when they have to go to family or friends or rent somewhere, because there's such a housing shortage in LA, they're not necessarily rehoming temporarily or permanently in their neighborhoods. So the school situation is horrible. I have a very good friend who lives in Burbank, and her daughter's school and that whole area where the school is, she did not lose her home, but the whole area where the school is was completely consumed. And so so many of her friends, and they also were needed to regroup quickly into another public building to be able to go to school.
With all of your expertise and background, how are you and a handful of other people reaching out and working with, if that's even the right word, with a lot of these people, from the quagmire of what they need to go through, the emotional support, and then of even rebuilding.
They are beginning to decide collectively how to go about recreating the kinds of neighborhoods that they lost and to what degree those are going to modernize and things like that. So personally, I have a podcast also called From Disaster to Dream Home. After I went through what I did with my home, I was searchable through, social media when the Woolsey fire was going on. And I was able to work with two families who completely lost their homes in a neighborhood where not every home went. So it would be 3 homes were perfectly fine, and then this one home, one of them was all very much backed up to the edge of the wilderness, so that was more understandable. But they lost everything they had because it was a less saturated area. They both were be able to move in and rent homes that were not too far from where they were, and I helped them from the beginning to the end. And the best time to incorporate someone with my skills, whether it's me or another interior designer, is when your builder or your architect is past the first phase of the conversation, but not yet fully permitted, because an interior designer brings a different perspective. What kinds of budgeting is current, because a lot of the programs the builders are going to use aren't necessarily 100% current. Understanding the taste level of the client to realize what's possible. As I was finishing up these 2 homes and bringing the joyful aspect of the entire horror process into these people having created something that they now will love and know that they would build new memories, I created the podcast, and it's 50 episodes. It literally takes you through the process from the beginning conversations with your architect and your insurance person and mortgage issues and the architect and the builder through to the finishing touches on your home. So there are episodes that show you the process of what to be aware of all the way through the building process. And my goal is to make sure people know that that's available. It's on every major podcast carrier, and it's free and available. And to help people understand that seeking someone who can help them in my field would be really advantageous.
Stay with us to hear a thought-provoking coaching tip and a short word from our sponsor, Try Coaching. Then Jana has a lot more to share. What are you committed to these days? And are these commitments serving you to reach your goals and successes? Are you committed to social media, comparing yourself to others, which can make you insecure and mediocre? And are you committed to thinking about what you'd like to be doing, yet not moving forward? When do you start committing to you and who you want to become? Perhaps it's time to consider hiring a coach to help you focus on making progress in your life and business. As a 3-time certified executive business and communications coach, I've been helping clients for over 20 years refocus their attention on what's important and achieving success. What about the emotional part? How do you deal with that part?
It's challenging.
Unhinged, that they can't even get to the next stage.
That's part of why it takes time. So people are in a bit of a state of shock now, and it can take 6 to 8 months to be able to really begin. I mean, it's really premature for the best of my skill set. What I can offer immediately is compassion and understanding and the knowledge that there will be a series of solutions, whether it's rebuilding or not rebuilding, that will be the right choices for each individual. And I think that watching the communities mobilize and be able to support each other, I feel that I have an added level of compassion because of the projects I've already worked on with people who have gone through the process. And again, by the time I start working with them, we may be 6 or 8 months into it. Some of the shock is down, but now they have fear of knowing the best choices to make, knowing whether they're doing the right thing with the choices that they're making, knowing that they're going to be able to afford the unknown, how to make the decisions that will bring them back to a place of joy and discovery. And I think that my position in that process is helping people understand the possibilities and listening. I think that, all of us as a community need to listen to the people that are going through the things that, there before the grace of God we are all vulnerable to the fires and to things that we can't expect. And it's a matter of just being available to hear people and to be available for when they get to apply known ways of proceeding and choose the best ones and the best people to support them.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there's got to be a lot of hand holding.
Oh, for sure.
People that are in shock or see this devastation and don't know what to do. I don't think, again, they're capable of anything for the moment.
Time is the best healer and creates the opening. If you allow yourself to breathe, and the community supports the people going through this until, it's like, catching a wave, you need to set back before you get on it and are able to move forward. And it's initially, I think, hard for people to let themselves realize that there's a grieving process and a huge arc of emotion that is going to carry all the way through the process. And really for the rest of their lives, there'll be PTSD kinds of, effects. But the most important thing is to realize where your strengths are in your family and your friends and your neighborhood and your community, and let those energies of the people around you support you and help, move you forward. One of our episode is one of our last, I think it's 48 or 49, a couple who lost their home in the Boulder fires in Colorado. And they really speak to this process. They're now in their new home, but they were the first on their block to get that far. And it was mainly because they had already built a home once in their lives, and they knew, what to do and how to proceed, which made a huge difference.
You've been doing this a long time. What kind of effect does it have on you? Does it take a toll on you? Or can you step back and have all this happen and yet not have it seep in to your own being?
That is an excellent, question. I consider myself part of the solution. So I'm already in a great place because I have the knowledge and the tools that the people I'm working with are going to need. And if I can work with them slowly to start and develop their trust, and they allow me to guide them, then I can take a lot of the difficulties and pressures off of the process of, most of my clients, never mind the ones that are having to build because of a loss, are doing this kind of major project for the first time. So all of the aspects of rebuilding or building are going to be new to them. We do it every day. So there's very little I haven't seen that can inform the process and make it so that everything is easier and hopefully bring a lightness and a joy. I mean, when you go to a stone yard to start to look at your countertop materials, it's like going to an art museum. I mean, it's, I take people to see the natural materials and the man-made materials, and, we really take the time to experience the things that will help lead them to decisions that are going to fill their hearts with joy. And hopefully, eventually, over time, the joy overcomes the sadness.
How do you think your work uniquely allows you to help other people? You've already said that, but from your own inner perspective, what does it do for you?
I learned a lot doing my own home. I live in a home that is a fraction the size of many of my clients' homes by choice, because I find it important to be able to vacuum the whole home from one plug point. I got to personalize every inch of my space. By being out of my home, I mean, I'm grateful I had a house to rebuild, but it was as if it had bounced in an earthquake and there was damage on all of the 4 perimeter walls and everything in between. So I got to make decisions based on our lifestyle. And I had always thought that I was, helping my clients see what they wanted to really accomplish, but I intrinsically understand it better than I would have ever, having gone through it myself, having been, out of it and had the perspective to look into it and say, we should really take this wall down because it's not servicing us. And I would really love to be able to watch, the grandbabies across the room while we're, preparing a meal and all of those things. So it led me to ask myself the questions I've been asking my clients all these years and help me get more specific and more meaning out of the answers.
Well, you are really creating change in your corner of the world. That's for sure, Jana. And it's so wonderful, really. Your podcast, From Disaster to Dream Home. And where would our listeners find that?
It's on all the major podcast networks. So if you go to FromDisasterToDreamHome.com, all of the episodes are on my website in order. I think there's one link where you can get them from the most recent back, and the other link takes you from the beginning through. And people can contact me through my website. And I'm formulating a Zoom call, kind of meetup that I'm going to, wait a little bit until people are starting to be able to think about moving forward. And then hopefully we'll be able to broadcast that. So if people sign up for our newsletters and things on the podcast network website, then I'll be able to, reach out when I have the sort of meetups begin.
Some people who don't live in California, but know a lot of people that live there, how can people get in touch with you, your website, etc.?
For me, again, it's through my website, which is FromDisasterToDreamHome.com. And it's an easy contact link to be able to reach out. And if people are looking for ways to, work with the different neighborhoods and the people going through the process, if they reach out to me, I'll send them some links to the Palisades, people who are formulating there, and the people who are out in Altadena. I'll have to research sort of the best links, but there are a lot of charitable organizations which you have to vet, and maybe we'll start to vet those and make sure the ones we post are going to be the right ones for people to contribute to. But a lot of the people who don't fully have the funds or have a deductible that's going to be prohibitive, or the amount of their home that they own versus the mortgage that's due, because they have to keep paying the mortgage even if they're not living in their home, and then they have rent to pay, but hopefully their insurance is covering that. But charitable organizations that are fundraising are, I think, looking to be able to help support some of the openings in the financial, spaces for people, so that neighborhoods won't disappear because of the lack of ability to rebuild.
Jana Rosenblatt, Jana Design Interiors, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
I love being a part of your podcast. It's a wonderful and optimistic way to hear people who are really working through amazing things and giving back to the community.
Thank you, Jana. It's been my pleasure. We just heard Jana's compelling and extraordinary conversation that has offered you thoughts on how you can turn losses into fresh starts. Reviews encourage people to listen to my podcasts. If you loved what you heard, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. For related content on extraordinary work, please visit my website, trycoaching.com. On my next episode, you'll meet Jennifer Gardner, a Los Angeles-based trial attorney and persuasive communications consultant, specializing in strategic, empathetic, and persuasive communication. Her superpower is arming trial lawyers with strategic messaging and storytelling for their cases and helping them with their courtroom presence. You won't want to miss this behind-the-scenes conversation on what it takes to be an influential and kick-ass trial attorney.